Yeah, good morning, good morning. Mm, 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 mm. Okay, so a lot of people have been talking recently about or asking me about darkness. Is there a power of darkness? Is there a power of evil? Because I guess it seems that there's kind of some darkness at this time in our history, and we see people acting in ways that we might call evil. Seems to be an odd attraction for people to act in ways that are less than loving and caring and compassionate and honest. So what's going on? Is there a power of evil? And I'm sure probably people wondered the same thing in the 30s and 40s in Europe. That seemed to be, evil seemed to reign, for a while anyway. And other times in our histories, in our human history, there seemed to be dark times. The Crusades, the plague, as James Joyce famously wrote, history is a nightmare from which I'm trying to awake. And there have been times in our human history we can look back and go, oh, that was kind of a light time. There looked like there was some light coming out. The Enlightenment, maybe the early 60s, other times we can look. So what's going on? Well, let's look at this from a new thought perspective, and really my perspective. I'm sharing my understanding. And just to clarify, when I'm talking about light here, I'm talking about the power of love. I'm talking about a conscious awareness of oneness. And I'm talking about darkness right now in the context of the opposite of that, of hatred and fear and injustice and intolerance and corruption and all of that. I'm not referring to darkness right now as the fertile void from which the creation flows, the birthing darkness, like that darkness of a mother's womb where an embryo turns into a baby, or the darkness of the soil of Mother Earth where seeds germinate and grow and develop. And I'll be moving into that sense of it a little bit later. But right now I'm talking about darkness as kind of the opposite of love and compassion and generosity, right? And honesty. All right, so let's take a breath together. So if there is only one power and presence that created the universe out of itself, that expresses as all forms of life, where could that other power be? How could it be? Think about what that would mean. So last week, Dana and I and our daughter Juliet were visiting Washington, D.C. We were celebrating her successful semester, and this is one of her favorite cities. And she had us walking everywhere. We were walking all over the great neighborhoods and the museums and the Smithsonian's. We were walking. Fabulous things to see there. We did avoid the construction that was going on in the National Mall and all of that. But the Smithsonian Museum, so we one of the ones we went to was the Museum of Air and Space. Have you been there? It's fabulous, just fabulous. And we had been walking quite a ways at that point, and I saw that there was a planetarium there. And I said, honey, let's just go in the planetarium for a half an hour and sit down and rest our feet and watch a show while Juliet continues to, run all over. And so we did. We went into the planetarium, watched a show. And I have to say, our Moorhead Planetarium is pretty fabulous. I think it's equal to, if not better, than the Smithsonian one, right? It's good. But, okay, it's still good. So we're laying back and resting, and, you know, you're surrounded by a dome of billions of stars that are all around. And the show is called The Birth of the Universe. And let's have the slide. I love this image. Never get tired. This is from the James Webb Telescope. So, you know, these enormous plumes of gas that are, I don't know, hundreds of, you know, who knows how many light years across, I don't know. But they call it the birthplace of stars. And so, you know, the gas swirls around and eventually coalesces into a star, and all that same energy, that same matter coalesces into the planets that orbit around the star and, you know, becomes a solar system. And these beautiful stars come into existence and then go out of existence and come into existence and go out of existence, the whole vast, infinite universe. And you think of that word, universe, meaning one. It's this one force that creates all of this. So there's no opposing power. If there were an opposing power, the universe would have annihilated itself a long time ago. So one power and one presence that expresses as all forms, that creates, guides, and governs the entire universe, that expresses, that is in, through, and as each of us, we're part of it. And we understand it as a positive, you know, life force. We understand it as love, a power of love. All right, so if that's true, then how do you explain the prevalence of fear and hatred and injustice and separation consciousness and, you know, that growing energy that seems to be there? How do we explain that? Excuse me, I need a little water here. Well, I sometimes find myths helpful. You know, ancient myths, creation myths, helpful in helping us understand, you know, kind of like opens up channels and different channels in our brain to help us have a different perception of things. Not that it's true, but it just kind of helps us see it differently. So there is the mystical Jewish idea of tikkun olam that says that God is, that God wanted to express itself in different aspects of itself, wanted to know different facets of its being. And so it poured its light into these different vessels to express. But the light was so intense, there was so much light that the form couldn't hold it, and it broke apart and split into millions, billions of shards of light. And we are those shards of light. And, you know, if you think about, if this were true, and this is my part of this, okay, so like a shard of glass over here, or a shard of light over here, it looks like we're separate, right? It looks like we're separate from each other. It looks like we're separate from the source. It looks like we're separate from our good. And that separation consciousness is what leads to all manner of fear, lack, limitation, oppression, domination, competition, all of that, right? So the idea of tikkun olam is that it is up to us, those of us who are aware, to help bring the pieces back together, to repair the world, bring it back together. Isn't that an interesting way to see it? You know, it kind of helps us to see where this, you know, the idea, at least open our consciousness. So that experience, the experience of separation, is just that. It's just an experience. And there's a vast difference between what is actually eternally true and what our current understanding is based on our limited perception. It doesn't mean our experience isn't real, though. So I think it might be also helpful to think about this one power and presence, this divine love, as the sun, you know, metaphorically, as the sun. So the sun is always shining, right? Even when it's cloudy, even when it's a cloudy day, even when it's storming, even when it's a blizzard or a hurricane and, you know, really dark, the sun is still there. Now, the storms affect us. Oh, I think we have a, yeah. So underneath, we're under here. So the storms affect us. The winds can be really damaging. A little bit of rain is good, but too much rain all at once is problematic. And so here we are being affected by the weather, right? But all the while the sun is shining. It never goes out. It's a constant. So this is how I think of darkness, is that it obscures the light. And it affects us here in this human dimension, but the light is a constant. The light is always there, eternally there. And here's the thing. While we have no power to change the weather, we either need to sit out or, you know, gear up, right? We do have the power to lift ourselves above the seeming darkness, above the hatred and the separation consciousness and division. We have the power to lift ourselves above and align ourselves with truth and to have that be our experience. How do we do that? Well, the first thing we can do is, in the middle of the storm of darkness, we can turn our attention within. Take a pause. Take a breath. Turn our attention within. You can do this with me right now. Let's just close your eyes. Maybe place your hand over your heart, if that feels right. And breathe into that space. Feel that presence right there. That love, eternal. That light, always constant. And we can affirm, I am of the light. Let's say that together. I am of the light. We are of the light. We are of the light. Everyone is of the light. Everyone is of the light. They may not know it, but we can know it. We can know it. Take another breath there. All right. So that's what we do first. We start there. And then the next moment, we can see that we have two possibilities in front of us. The first opportunity we have is to ask ourselves, how can this challenging experience, how can this experience help me to grow and evolve into a better person? How can I evolve and realize more of my true nature, more of my full potential. And this is really the point of it, isn't it? So we want to spend some time here and really contemplate this, meditate on it, journal about it, work with, a spiritual coach on this, whatever. We want to spend some time here and get clear about how I am to grow. Which one of my 12 powers needs to be activated here? In what ways can I begin to get stronger and develop and grow? As I've said here many times before, on the days where everything is going smoothly and everybody's nice to us, not the days of our greatest growth, right? Not the days of our greatest growth. It seems to be those stormy days, right? And, it's kind of like in the darkness of the cocoon that the caterpillar is dying to its old self and in order to emerge into the butterfly. And the butterfly, when it's growing its wings, has got to kind of move it a little bit and exercise its wing muscles, and you can see it kind of squirming in the cocoon as it's doing this. And if you think, I'm going to help it, the poor little thing. Hey, what if I just cut the cocoon open and release that poor thing? But the butterfly would not be able to exist because it didn't have the time to develop its wings so it could fly. Okay, so secondly, the second question we ask ourselves is, how can I bring more light to this appearance of darkness? In other words, what is mine to do? How can I bring more light to the appearance? Because, light, because it's the only power, is much more powerful than darkness, which is really not a power. So when we align ourselves with light, anchor ourselves in that light, then we become the expression of it. We become one with the source of love and compassion and healing. We become the rays of the sun that dispel the darkness. All right, so the word evil is mentioned in the Bible 613 times. I didn't count it, I Googled it. That's a lot, in a different context. And when Jesus talked about evil, first of all, he was speaking Aramaic. Many of you know this. This was the language of the people that he was teaching, the language of that place and time. He spoke Aramaic. The New Testament was never written down in Aramaic. In fact, it wasn't written at all until 60 or 70 years after, and then it was written in Greek and then translated, German and Old English, whatever. So something got lost in translation there. And the word evil in Aramaic, it is actually the word bisha. Bisha means unripe fruit. Unripe fruit. So Jesus was talking about unripe fruit. In other words, something that's immature. Something that's immature, that it hasn't completely developed, that it hasn't been completely realized. That's a different idea. That's a different understanding of it, isn't it? So darkness, or bisha, is not something to be feared. And those dark moments in our lives are the moments, they can be the moments of our greatest growth. They can be the time that we mature and we get stronger so that we can fly. So if we see those times for what they are and Stop resisting them, as Donna was talking about last week. Stop trying to make them go away. And then just kind of lean in, take a breath, and say, how can I get stronger here? What do I need to develop? How can I grow? How can I evolve and realize more of my full potential? How can I realize more of my light that I am? Right? So now you can see that I'm moving into this sense of darkness as the fertile ground, as the birthing power, as that power that helps to or allows the seeds to germinate, new growth, things to become stronger, new growth to happen, something new, creative, and powerful can be born from this. And we can do this individually and also collectively. I think we have a really grand opportunity as citizens of this country, citizens of the world, to reimagine ourselves, to really take a moment and step back and get strong about who we are, who we want to be, who we see, what possibility, what's the possibility for us as people to live? What's a new way of living? And really take this opportunity to go within and envision and work with others and take this time. Who do we want to be? What people do we want to be? Right? It's an opportunity. So, we can kind of dance, between this intersection of light and dark. And certainly we want to celebrate the light. We want to cultivate the light. We seek the light. We want to share the light. We want to be in the light. And in those times of darkness, not resist it and just turn within and ask, how can I grow? How can I take this painful, sorrow-filled, challenging, scary time and begin to really grow and really, really get this so that I can step out, so that I can fly, right? All right, so I'd like to read this passage from Rainer Maria Rilke, and I'd like you to kind of sit back and close your eyes and take it in. Quiet friend who has come so far, feel how your breathing makes more space around you. Let this darkness be a bell tower, and you the bell. As you ring, what batters you becomes your strength. Move back and forth into the change. What is it like, such intensity of pain? If the drink is bitter, turn yourself to wine. In this uncontainable night, be the mystery at the crossroads of your senses, the meaning discovered there. And if the world has ceased to hear you, say to the silent earth, I flow. To the rushing water, speak, I am. I am. I am. And so it is. Namaste.
Hi, it's Reverend Victoria here. I'm at Unity Center of Peace with our house band, Bright Matter.
Hello.
Yeah, And if this video has inspired you or empowered you or opened your heart, opened your consciousness, or even just given you hope, we ask that you support what we're doing here by making a donation today, going to unitychapelhill.org or clicking the link below. And we thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.